up next is a citation for our own professor who will be taking on the first keynote speech. Good morning once again, ladies and gentlemen. We are on the first keynote address to be delivered by Professor Oyewale Tomori. I have the pleasure to read the citation of this distinguished professor. On the profile there is his picture. Professor Tomori holds a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree from Ahmadu Bello University, Nigeria, and a PhD in Virology from the University of Ibadan, Nigeria. He was appointed as a professor of virology in 1981 and later became the head of the Department of Virology at the University of Ibadan. He was a pioneer vice chancellor of Redeemers University, Nigeria, between 2004 and 2011. His interests in research include viral infection, such as Ebola, yellow fever, Lassa fever. He served as a regional virologist for the World Health Organization African region, 1994 to 2004. He is a recipient of numerous national and international awards and fellowships. For example, United States Department of Health and Human Service Public Health Service Certificate, Nigerian National Ministry of Science and Technology Merit Award for Excellence in Medical Research, Fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Science, Fellow of the College of Veterinary Surgeons of Nigeria, Fellow of the Royal College of Pathologists of the United Kingdom, international member of the United States National Academy of Medicines, and also a fellow of American Society of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene. He is the past president of Nigerian Academy of Science. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to bring to the virtual podium Professor Oyewale Tomori, as he will deliver a keynote speech entitled Importance of Multidisciplinary Research, Quality, Synergy in Collaborative Research. Distinguished Professor, you're welcome to the podium. Prof, you can unmute yourself and let's have your results.
Thank you very much, my friend. Can you hear me?
Fantastic, Prof. I can hear you loud and clear.
I need to share my slides. I guess I have the authority to do that.
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Can you see anything? I hope you can.
Yeah, but I can see your Zoom. Okay, great. You are getting there. I can see you're not on the slideshow.
Is that so? Is that better?
Just a minute. Oh, fantastic, Prof. Is there. Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I want to thank all of you, young people, for this invitation. I was quite excited this morning because I came in early just to see what was going on and what was happening. I'm really, really excited about the enthusiasm and the drive, especially shown by Bright and the team. Again, I saw through all the slides. There's just one little thing I wanted to say you did not add. You talked about the training, the number of people you have trained and all that, especially in grant writing and all that. I was looking to see how many of them have won grants. That's the only way you can know how successful you are. It's not the number of people you have trained, but the number of people who, through your training, have received grants and awards over the years. So next time, please remember to put that, because that is the one that tells you you are really succeeding. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I went through the ASFI and all of the activities that you're doing. Without what you are doing, I think we will have a great problem in Africa. There's been a gap between the times of my generation and yours. There was a big gap in which we lost all the things. And as you read in my CV, I never left my country to study. All my study from primary to university was done in Nigeria because my government created an enabling environment for me not to leave my country because I really had nothing to gain by going out. I had all I needed because our government cared about those little things you're talking about, research and others. And that's the reason why many of us stayed at home. You see what is happening now is a majority of the young people are leaving Africa. Some are taking dangerous journeys through the desert just to be out of the nonsense that is around us. So you that are staying and who are around, you need to be praised and to be commended for the resilience you have. However, we must continue to do much better than we're doing so that you won't get to a point where you yourself get tired and say, I want to give up. So, and that's why the importance of multidisciplinary research in advancing knowledge becomes important. Knowledge is power. And if you see, I talk a little bit about many countries that started like countries in Africa, but we're not in the same categories today. One of the slides shown by Bright was showing the internet users at a particular period of time when all of us were the same. And now you see the difference. Africa has been left behind, just like this. We are where we should not be. The same thing happens in the way we deal with issues. Take the COVID, for example. When it came, everybody in the world was ignorant of COVID, and everybody was learning. And instead of Africa learning about its own peculiar situation with COVID, we were waiting for the world to tell us what to do. It wasn't that we didn't have the people, but we had this mental laziness that would never allow us to sit down and analyze the things that we have, the things that concern us. Rather, we wait for WHO, we wait for Europe, we wait for whatever to come and tell us this is what you should do. When in actual fact, we know what they're telling us does not match what we need to do. So I'm going to be looking at the talk, looking at a bit introduction, and talk about research. What is, when I say MICT, I'm talking about multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary research. And how can we use all that to advance knowledge? And I'll give a few examples of where interdisciplinary research has provided solutions to the problem of the world. And then I quickly conclude. That slide, this was shown by somebody many years ago, showing, because the Africa, the infectious continent. And that's what the people still look at us. And this is what we ourselves begin to think like that. This is what we are. But then we make a great mistake that we're not like this. Since we're not like this, is that we have accepted what we should not accept. And that's why we remain where we are. Oops, sorry. This slide is supposed to be moving on. Okay. So as Bright said and others you have said in your introduction, Africa's development challenges are many. They are numerous and they are multidimensional. They are cultural, they are scientific, they are political. All these are this. But science, if it is rightly applied, can produce solutions to all of these issues we are talking about. And therefore, the multidimensional nature of our challenges also calls for a multi-sectorial, all hands must be on deck science approach. I'm sure Bright will see that I copied that all hands must be on deck from his own, what he has put out. The need for a multi-sectoral approach to solving Africa's problem must be through research, and this is what you are doing through this kind of conference and the boot camp. You are the future of Africa, and you must get yourself prepared for the future of Africa, for the problem that we have, the solution to it. A few of us of my generation will be at the background to provide support and guide you along the steps where we made mistakes and where you should not make mistakes. You should be faster than we have made progress. And that's what we are behind and waiting for. Now, your specific approach, why do we need multidisciplinary research? Why do you want to engage in multidisciplinary research? Because your specific approach may be limited and listen to your own discipline alone. And you close yourself to ideas by not getting involved in multidisciplinary research. There are different horizons from different areas, new ideas from other groups. And when you apply that, you find that some of the stumbling blocks you have been seen in your research can be sorted out by opening yourself up to new ideas from other groups. And that's part of the reason why you need multidisciplinary research. In the monodisciplinary field, if you are the only one working as a chemist, and you are doing your chemistry lab, you see that you have many specialists in your field. And after some time, you don't even know what to study because people before you have studied all those things. It's only when you open that your chemistry to other things. What does this chemical do in the life of somebody? How does it affect a patient? How does it affect the food? Then you now begin to look at people in food specialties, you look at doctors, you look at that, and you open your horizon as a chemist to get involved in those other things. By teaming up with complementary research groups, you can have what you call collective expertise, and you gain a synergy. You synergize your activity, you work together, and you strengthen yourself. You strengthen the other group strengthens you, and you move better together. Remember that famous thing, if you want to run far or whatever, you have to work together. If you want to run fast, you can continue on your own. Multidisciplinary approach allows us to study the phenomenon that is around us, not in isolation, but in holistic and in the totality of what man does not exist in isolation in the world. The air we are breathing is polluted by somebody who is making chemicals somewhere. The air we are breathing is affected by all the issues that are around us. People mess up around, defecate in places, they affect us. So you are not alone. The animal that is there is also in its own niche, is living with you in the same environment. So the plants and the things that we're studying, remember they bring in carbon dioxide and take out oxygen, and you take the oxygen and give out carbon dioxide, and that's how we interrelate. And that's the only way, if supposing there's only we giving out carbon dioxide, at the end of it all, we're going to end up suffocating of carbon dioxide or monoxide poisoning. So it gives you an opportunity to look at your study at the same time together and see what others are thinking about what you're doing. So we talk about multidisciplinary research, which refers to working together where you have 2 or 3 or more disciplines work together to contribute to the understanding of a problem and then define the solution. Sorry about the typographical errors. Multidisciplinary and cross-disciplinary research are actually used synonymously. Other times, interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research. So each of these illustrate the depth and integration. You can have, collaboration with somebody on the surface. But then sometimes when you get into, when a scientist gets working with a sociologist, for example, when a scientist gets working with an anthropologist, for example, his thoughts are deeper than today. They are thinking of the past, what happened in the past, what happened in the generation of my people, of my great-grandfather, how did he survive, how did he overcome? And then we can learn, cross-learning from there because of that deep relationship. Interdisciplinary research aims at more deeper integration, not only just in the methodology, but in the theories that we do, in the context and the perspective of what we are studying. So we're looking at the totality of everything and not just, surface in paper publication. How will what I'm doing deeper into the life of the people? What is the relevance of what I'm studying? If I don't understand my people, if I don't understand the way they behave, how will my research ever solve their problem when I don't even know their problem? And yet the sociologists, the economists, and all these are the people who bring all this into. And so when you bring your research into that, you say, we have this problem in the area of people's reaction. Take the issue of Ebola. It is cultural for us to wash dead bodies before they are buried. But then not only are we washing dead bodies, we are washing Ebola virus into us. And unless you begin to understand all those things, you can never stop an epidemic. These are some of the areas where the scientist does not stay in his own test tube, but he also looks outside the box and say, look, what is happening? I always say, I don't want to put myself in the box. So don't let me say, people say, think outside the box. I don't want to get into the box in the first place. And that's the kind of thing. So this relationship leads to new research topics, new ideas, new concepts. You'll expand, you deepen your research questions, and then you'll be able to have better answers. Transdisciplinary research is the greater level of integration by transferring and transitioning beyond the artificial boundaries that we create in our different areas. I'm a scientist, I'm a physicist, I'm a chemist. Oh, yeah, that kind of thing. But then chemistry does not exist in isolation. And that's why we begin to see this. So what is knowledge? Knowledge is a form of awareness that familiarizes you with what is around you. You have knowledge about what is going on. You have facts. You develop Knowledge could be developing practical skills. I may also mean just familiarity with your situation. And the Bible says we perish for lack of knowledge. But let me see, there are two types of knowledge. There's the explicit knowledge, which is the formal structural thing that you and I do when we go out and study science and all that kind of thing, written, archives, internet, all those things, and then we pass that to the others. That's the lecturer passes to student, who in turn, when he becomes a lecturer, passes on to that one. That's explicit knowledge. But there's also that implicit knowledge, which is based on your personal experience, your ability to infer, your intuition, and your personal judgment will improve upon the explicit one and make you a better person. So this form of knowledge is not just wanting to know what is there. I want to know when, I want to know why, I want to know who, I want to know how. The combination of that is what makes the totality of knowledge. In that place, it talks about finding solution, experience, and all that. And some people talk about 14 stages of knowledge, but we won't go into that. But let me quickly go into that. So knowledge is knowing what to say, but more important is wisdom, is knowing when to say it. So many of us, we are well knowledgeable, but how do we apply? That application of knowledge is the wisdom, which a few of us actually lack. We are professors of that, professors of this, and right down behind your house, you're having a problem that your professorship cannot solve. These are the kind of things you begin to look at. Am I, of what use or what benefit? Your research must have relevance to the needs of the people who are responsible for paying for your research. Your research must ask questions about your society. Just you are a scientist that you shape your society, just as the society shapes your science. These are things that we need to know, so we cannot act in isolation. Why do we need multidisciplinary research? Initially, the world started with the smoke code when we used to send smoke messages to our people. And then in our villages, we beat drums to let you know that a festival is about to start. And you remember the gong when the town crier would go out, when the king says, all of you must come tomorrow, that kind of thing. Now we're looking at, then we move to the Morse code, now computer, and now software coding. Today, we're talking about AI, we're talking about the ChatGPT. So the world is moving. The scientists who decide to stay in the smoke code will be extinct. As the society becomes more complex, then also the problems of society will also become more complex. And so if you stick to your own monodiscipline, then you are making an attempt to suicide. You're on the route to extinction, just like the dinosaur. And that's exactly what happens when you refuse when you refuse to get involved in multidisciplinary research. So the current age of globalization is creating problems that are unimaginable. Who would ever have thought that a disease that occurred in one part of Wuhan will become a global issue that is killing 6 million people? That wasn't happening before. Well, there have been cases of world pandemic before, but that's not it. So the multidisciplinary emphasis will be the solution, and it contributes by a paradigm shift to what we're doing. So how do we manage multidisciplinary research? You first of all define the problem. What are your objectives? What is the goal? Do you have the budget? What timeline do you have to do that? And then do you need people to join you? For example, you don't need somebody to change the light bulb, but you're going to need a team to do the lighting stadium lighting system in a stadium. So you look at your research. Do I need other people? How much knowledge do I have about certain things? Am I knowledgeable about this other aspect of it? Am I an expert in that area? Or no? If you're not, then of course, then you need to identify the type of experts, what kind of disciplines you need, so that you bring them. Then you define for them the specific that they're going to do. It's not just come in and do what you like. It has to be do what is in line with the objective that I've set for myself. So along the line, and that's one of the problems that many of us, we wait until the problem has arisen before you start looking for solution. When you are designing your motivation, you must begin to identify potential barriers and problems. And what are the things that you begin to, and then you must prepare your mitigation plans against them ahead of time. It may not solve the problem, but at least it keeps you ahead. And you must constantly, as you even do your research, continue to identify those obstacles that may come up. It could be on a personality basis, it could be of funding, it could be of whatever you anticipated I mean, like, for example, let me give you a good example. Nigeria gives funds for you to do research. We forget about the issue of customs. The fund I'm giving does not cover the custom charges. And at the end of it, I have a problem. So while I'm making my budget, I must begin to think that I'm going to import something, especially when I don't produce anything. This is going to cost me, this is going to be time delay. You must put all that into your plan. And then you recruit your team members based on the qualification of what you need, not just my brother, come and join me, come and do exam, or my sister, come and let's do this all together, even though you know it's not going to contribute anything. You bring people who will make positive impact into your research. And then you must meet regularly to meet with your business. Allow your team to do their job. If you call me an expert and you are not an expert, don't micromanage your research. Let the people do it, and then we all talk together. So I say, anticipate your problem and always remember to do that. So what are the pros and cons for doing research? First of all, by having transdisciplinary research or multidisciplinary research, you have a better quality and you have a more impactful result. Yeah, because you have different perspectives, you have different approaches, and you use different methods, and you bring all that together into one single solution. Your approach is holistic, it's comprehensive, it's diverse. And so you are likely going to end up with more enduring results, efficiency, and effectiveness. And critical strategy is thinking, because you have so many other people coming in. I'm going to focus on the pros here, and I'll come back to the cons later. So other pros are your greater overall troubleshooting power. You're looking at the physical side, you're looking at the social, ethical, all sorts of problems. Me as a scientist, I may have little or no knowledge about the ethical considerations, but when we have a team and each person looking at his own specific area, then we bring all that together and we can look at all this and make plans in mitigating. The multidisciplinary research requires networking, which is, I'm glad you also mentioned it during the opening ceremony, the need for us to network together, know people who are doing things in different places, what facilities they have, how can we exchange ideas, how can we come and work in your place or something. Many of us would like to work in New York. Yes, in Cairo, there's a research center that's solving Africa's problem. Why would I want to go to New York, not Cairo? These are things that networking does. And you have assets in terms of efficiency, the talents of your people, your team, your assets. And therefore, you are likely, because of that, it's easier for you to obtain multiple funding. Let me go back to some of the cons. Because we are speaking different languages, we may not really understand each other. And that's why the need to meet together at the time. We have a different system of doing our research. We have a different system of even writing our publications. Sometimes I look at some of the social journals I read from the social, and then I find that there are references at the bottom of the page, on each page. For me, my research puts the number and pulls all the reference at the back. These are literally two differences that you note in what you are doing. And the way your conceptual framework will differ because of the area of what you're doing. There will always be disagreement, because where 2 or 3 people are gathered, there will always be reason for quarrel, whether we like it or not. Where 2 or 3 people are gathered, let me not maybe say there's always be a disagreement, particular clashes. And then you are talking of managing diverse disciplines and individuals. These are really problems. And then there's usually sometimes the clash over the ownership of the, if you invite me and then you want to I want to take over the meeting. These are things we need to sort out right from day one. These are problems that could arise. Take the issue of writing publications. Who is the senior author? What position do I take there? These are issues that we are taking care of. So you then have, as I said, mentioned the issue of overall. There are varying degrees of people's ability. There's confusion over the process and policies. And I mentioned the issue of publication, author lists, and order. Now, I'm going to give a few examples of where people, this I got from Ghana. I was looking at, the functioning, and the issue was to provide good drugs for people who are suffering from a particular type of disease. If you start from the top, you find the groups that are there. not only the research center, the charities and funders all together. These are the stakeholders. The stakeholders include the patient, include the man who's going to use the drug eventually, the government who's going to buy the drug and all that. All of us must be involved in this research before we start, because you may end up producing a drug that is too costly for people to use. Therefore, you have the stakeholders, you have the funders, you have everybody all getting involved into this. This thing we want to produce, how can it be accessible? How can it be affordable? And all those are questions. That's where the stakeholders. So they identify the needs. Then you have the next group, which is the academic and the commercial side. What kind of technology are we going? What are we bringing in? How do we even make use of this technology? How does it come in and affect the patient? I mean, if you have something that has to be got by internet, for example, and majority of the cases are right in the bush there, what do? They have no access to internet. And there are other things. And this is where everybody comes in and brings in alternative solutions to some of the problems. And then the research itself, the academicians, the clinical research group, surgical teams, everybody, coming together to work in and end up with what you call the clinical efficacy. And then you have the health economics, who then looks at the informatics, who can get the message out to people, the communication experts. How do they get in? Those other things, they come in and bring in your clinical validation. And finally, the patient group itself, the people who are going to need those things, they must get involved in your research. There must be patient groups there who will carry out, you do impact studies to see how this will be effective. So all of this come down in the center on both the clinician and the patient. So you identify the needs, you have technology to develop to make sure that the needs are be transferred. You are sure that what you are producing is efficacious. You move on to then you validate it clinically, and finally come up with a value for the people. I'm going into the issue of One Health. The world, I mean, I keep saying, man is not alone in the world. We are in the whole environment together. The wildlife is there. You have the animal health, the domestic animals. You have the environment. We encroach on the reservoirs of these animals, and we get their diseases. We affect the animal health. We produce different types of food and all that. That also brings in, while we improve the livestock, it also brings out something which affects our diseases. And so we have emerging diseases that are coming in from different areas. And because we are having a relation, because we're not in isolation, we are working together. So it is important for us to have healthy people, healthy animals, and healthy environment. There's none of us here that has all the capability. You may be expert in health, but definitely you may not be in people, in human beings, but definitely you may not be an expert in animal problems. And you may be an expert in either people or animals, but you may be an expert in what you call it, the environment. So that's why we need to bring all of this together in this holistic approach to science, multidisciplinary. The man who knows about animals, the one who knows about wildlife, the one who knows about the human being, the one who knows about the environment, the pollution and other things. Those are the people we need together in our multidisciplinary approach. Sorry, I don't know why this is not moving. Sorry, I'm having problems with moving my slide. Okay, so remember the Ebola that happened during the Ebola epidemic that happened in Liberia, West Africa. You must have read that at one time that people actually ransacked the treatment clinic where they went there, stole beds and things. It doesn't make sense to you. I mean, I would go and start stealing polluted, Ebola contaminated mattresses and other things. So how do they solve the problem? In there, people will go into the clinic on Friday night because you can't allow people in there. They come back on Saturday, they are dead. And so people say, what are they doing to my people? They are killing my people. And it required the social scientists and the CCV technicians and traditional healers coming together. What did they do about people not trusting what was going on? The CCTV people, technicians, established a camera into the world, and there was a TV station outside where people cannot come in. So they saw what was going on, and then they regained their confidence in what was happening in the place there. And The traditional healer, culturally, as I mentioned, we wash our dead bodies. But then we needed to let them know that the people who are, when you are washing, you get yourself infected from it and all that. Educating people, knowledging them. So you need a sociologist, you need an anthropologist, you need a social scientist, you need physicians, you need vaccinologists, you need anthropologists, all working together. And that was the only way that the Ebola situation was brought under control. This one case in Nigeria. In 2003, there was a polio vaccine boycott in my country. 2023 later, we are now having conspiracy, which is happening, another vaccine push in the country. What went wrong? How come 20 years later, we're still having the same problem? Because we, in the science, we refuse to work together. We needed to understand our people. The scientists who was making the vaccine needed to know that people have different attitudes, and we need to be able to communicate better with them. Whatever science I know, I need to communicate it properly to the people for them to understand what I'm doing. Because they will, otherwise, ignorance, they say is bliss, but it's a problem. And that's why 20 years later, Nigeria had problem with polio vaccine boycott. 2023, we're still having problem with vaccine push against another disease. So let me give my last words, because I know there are other people. Africa has all it needs to succeed, but Africa does not take all she has. Africa wastes all she has, most of what she has. Africa takes out what it has to outside the world in return for pittance, or what you call aid. You take all of the best of what we have in Africa, our resources, and at least some of you, including some of us, on this podium. We take our money, we take it out of the country. Our politicians take our money and take it out and store it in the European banks to make their business better, and then impoverishing our own people here. So we have all it takes to succeed, but we do not take all we have. Africa, we have a warped sense about equity. You remember during the COVID and all the vaccine, whatever, the good example was when the COVID thing came, by the whole world, as I said, was ignorant, and they were sat down and making a vaccine. Africa was waiting for the vaccine to be made so that we can get it, because we think the world owes us something about equity. There's never any equity in the world, so let's not deceive ourselves. And those of you who are talking about equity, forget it. It's not, there's never be any equity. Let me not blaspheme, but remember, go back to origin. God created each and any of us equally in his image, didn't he? But he had his anointed. He has his people whom he called his own anointed. So forget about equity. You fight for equity. You don't beg for equity. You use your resources to fight for equity. Africa is begging for equity. When in actual fact, it should be using her resources to get to the negotiating table of equity. When you get to the table of equity, if you don't bring anything, you get no deal. If you bring your raw material, you get a raw deal. So we must learn from other countries that have been like us. Can you please mute? Can somebody please mute Nega? Thank you. So I was saying we must learn from India, Indonesia, and Singapore. What do I mean by that? India in 1847 after independence was just like any African country. I remember in my country when I was growing up, most of the teachers in our secondary schools were Indians. Then their governments got sense. They created a naming environment for their people. The Indians went back. The Indians that are coming back to Nigeria are heading all of the major companies in Africa as general manager and CEO. They're no longer teachers. Their country made a change. And a good example, remember during, again, the COVID, Britain, I think, told everybody, if you use COVID vaccine that was made in Europe, you go through the green line. If you use the COVID vaccine that was made in India, you go through the red line. Africa went down, abused Britain, everybody, oh, this is racism, you are doing that. What did India do? India calls England and says, you have your COVID vaccine, I have my COVID vaccine. If you don't take mine, I don't take yours. That day, India went from red to green. Indonesia and also are doing the same thing. Singapore, these are things. Africa can learn from all this instead of complaining all the time that, and it boils down to our leadership. And some of us are also part of it. You are in position of leadership. What are you doing in your university? What are you doing where you are? Are you not stealing money? Are you not taking money? Are you not doing what the politicians are doing? Are you not taking advantage of your opportunity? If you become the premier of the country, the way you were stealing in your university is the way you steal when you become the leader of our country. So let's bring that to ourselves individually. Those countries made up their mind. No more time for what do you call it, for this thing. So colleagues, my time is up. I want to thank you for this invitation, and I wish ASIF continued success. It is time for me to rest my case. Thank you very much. Over.
Thank you so much, Prof. That was a wonderful and thought-provoking submission that you have made. And it is high time Africans rise to their tasks. In other words, we will not have solution to our challenges. Actually, you still have some few moments, and I will just take up a few reflections, then also maybe ask 1 or 2 questions in the discussion, since we still have some more time. If I could gather from what you have submitted to us today, Prof.
Yes, sir.
You basically said, and I heard you rightly, Africa has a challenge. And this challenge is multi-dimensional. And because it is multi-dimensional, this calls for a multidisciplinary approach. In other words, a holistic approach of solving these problems. Or rather, I call it a challenge. And you say clearly, which I grab, there is need for collective experts. Expert in people, expert in environment, expert in animals. This is the only way we can solve our problem. And towards the end, you ended with a very remarkable submission. You said, we have all it takes to succeed. And that was my comfort. That was my comfort. It takes all, we have all it takes to succeed. In other words, we will not actually begin to beg for equity. We fight for equity with our resources. And like you rightly said, Prof, we have all it takes, all the resources in Africa, we have them at our disposal. In other words, we can fight for equity using our resources. And you ended by saying, we must learn from India, Indonesia, and Singapore. And that I've had over and over again. And truly, when I take a trip towards Indonesia and Singapore, I could see the remarkable change in them. That can be a case study. Lastly, knowledge is knowing what to say, but wisdom is knowing when to say it. Our research must shape the society and carve it into what we can achieve. Prof, that was a remarkable submission. Thank you so much, Prof. You still have some few minutes, and I wish to just ask just 2 persons to just, if there are questions, I'm just trying to go through if there are any 2 questions before I call Dr. Bright to give a thank remark from you. I'm not sure if I've seen any question targeted to you, just maybe 1 or 2, then they are easing equity in the world. Okay, that's great. That's great. I just love some submission. Thought-provoking. I can see someone said again there. They are easing. Let me read again. Submission. I think I missed that. There isn't equity in the world. You all should take place. You all should take place in the world. In the world, we must fight for it in the world. All right. I can see great discourse. This is profound. This is great. This is invaluable, Prof. Thank you for inspiring many. Prof, I can just, I can count the remark I can see from this today. And I think lastly, you enlightened us about the MDR, pros and cons, which were very enlightening. So thank you again so much, Prof, for this thought-provoking submission. And we tell you by God's grace, we ensure how we can put this into practice to see Africa change with what we have. Dr. Bright.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kwabai for that. And thank you, Prof. Tomori. It's quite profound. And I think you have really emphasized many of the things we have been thinking about and deliberating here. Actually, when your name was mentioned by the committee as one of those to invite, I had doubt. And the doubt was that you can't catch him easily. He's a very busy man. But they say, well, why don't we try? Why don't we try? You know, one thing I've noticed is that when people have reached the highest echelon of their career, it's not every email they even read. But Prof was very careful to look at the emails that came, read them, and responded that in. And that is very humbling. And you have come here this morning to charge us. People are reflecting on what you said, that Africa has all it takes. I remember when I had this idea of SFI, I was discussing with a friend in Nigeria, and he said, do you know that things have gone so bad that many mothers in Nigeria who give birth place order for baby food from the US? I said, do you mean that? He said, yes, of course. Many mothers buy food, baby food from the US. And here you're telling us that Africa has all it takes. We can reflect in different other aspects. For instance, our government will send people to go and be trained, and we splash money on them, do some courses in leadership. But you are there in Africa, you're there in Nigeria. Your experience is profound. I hear you're saying Africa has all it takes. I think that aligns with the statement I used to end, that for Africa's development, it takes Africans to develop Africa. And there's no better way to say it than to say thank you very much, Prof. I think we have a lot to learn from you, and we'll be coming back to you. Please, when you have time, please respond to us, because we believe that this generation has to rely on the experience of those who have passed so that we can get it right. I'm very pleased and grateful for this opportunity. Thank you very much. Please, can we give him a round of applause? You can just use your reaction there to say thank you to Prof. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bright. I'm also learning, so don't think it's both ways. I'm impressed and encouraged by what you are doing. Things I never thought of in my time, you're already doing it. And that's what I'm saying. That's the hope we have. And you must continue along that line, for the sake of the future. We will always be here. I will never be too busy for what is good for Africa. So, and by the way, I read all my emails every time. So don't worry about that. Just keep sending it. I will answer you. Okay.
That's good. I don't read all because they're too much. That's really good to hear.
Just the ones that are not necessary, just click off. But the names you identify them. So thank you, Bright, and thank all of you. The hope of Africa is in you. Please don't. We may have failed you, our generation, but don't fail yourself. Please.